I tried a new method for painting quick and realistic figures, so quick and effective that it feels ridiculous. No matter if you have zero experience or have painted some figures already, I combined some familiar modeling techniques that once applied in the correct order, this method seems like cheating. This is Notjustpanzer and welcome to my channel. For this video I chose this new reference from Alpine Miniatures. This figure is a tiny gem in its own. Assembling this figure was pretty straightforward, as there were no flashes or mold lines. I just added a couple of metal pins for an easier and separate painting. As always, I like to apply first a coat of primer. This time black color is going to be super useful, as it will fix the deeper shadows of the figure sculpture. I just hit the figure with a couple coats of primer, until all the crevices got covered by the paint. Now we are good to go. Next I created a basic lighting sketch enhancing the upper volumes. Not white this time, but I like the skin color. This light skin tone matches very well with the black primer, as it will create a high value color contrast, but avoiding an excessive to saturated looking. You can see how the upper areas receive a more consistent layer of light color, so the legs and lower parts of the uniform will remain in a lower value. Finally, using white acrylic ink, I hit some specific parts such as the helmet, ammo patches and bags, so they will stand further among all the tiny details. So let's dive now into the funny part. AK Interactive recently released their new speed paints, but this time with a specific World War II range, and I decided to give them a try. First I used these speed paints applied by airbrush. Airbrushing this type of paints helps me to cover a bigger surface in a less amount of time. The semi-transparent finish of this type of paints allows me to partially cover the surface, at the same time some of the previous work can still be seen. In my case, I struggled every time I tried to use my airbrush for figure painting. Some time ago, Gallery sent me this airbrush from their catalog, and I have tried for good. As you have seen, I use it for spraying all the paint coats and it works great. If interested, I leave you an affiliate link with a discount in the description below. So resuming the work, next, using the same colors, German grey for the trousers and felt grey for the green parka, but now applied by brush. I applied a nice and even coat over each piece, looking for a solid covering. Okay, you can be thinking now this is another slap chop or contrast painting video, but I guarantee you this is not. Wait until the end and you'll see the results and techniques. So let's keep working on it, right? Now I'm taking advantage of the real purpose of these paints, as the pigment tends to accumulate in the deepest recesses of the figure, enhancing the color contrast. But also, if you push the pigment towards the shadow areas, we can create effective color transitions, and the result is really eye-catching. So for the entire figure I applied the paint covering each garment at once, and later spreading the pigment towards the shadow areas. This can be easily appreciated specifically in the right arm area, as the color transition should be heavier. Now as I focused first in the bigger parts, I moved to the smaller details and accessories. The figure face received a coat of human flesh speed paint to establish some basic skin tones. Next, using a dark grey color, I painted the boots and ammo patches. I think that contrast paints make an outstanding work in small details like these ones. They create a harder contrast, but the piece itself gets an instant definition, and the technique is super simple too. Just apply a coat of paint for each part and nothing else, just pretty straightforward. Rest of small parts were painted also in the same way. Speed paint colors can be slightly changed using acrylic inks. I did this when painting the gloves, adding a bit of blue or some khaki color for the side or bird bags. Inks and speed paints combination comes super handy, as I can easily modify the shade of each speed paint color, or create a new tone if I need to, but always keeping the transparent covering of these paints. Keep in mind that if you add conventional acrylic paint to speed paints, they won't work properly. Resuming the work, speed paints did a really good job establishing a basic color contrast and nice color transitions, specifically in the small details with greater definition. But we can still push deepest shadows further, just as I normally do with my scale models. I will apply an oil wash to increase the contrast and definition. This is probably the most important step for this speed paint method, as it defines the color contrast of the figure. This time, using these 3 oil colors, I will apply oil washes over the entire figure, but applying a different color for every garment. You'll see. First, the field gray parts receive a wash of sepia and Payne's gray. Mixing both colors creates a dark but cooler tone, just perfect for adjusting deepest shadows of the parka. Greener and more khaki accessories received a wash of sepia color by itself, as they tend to be neutral in brownish tones. Finally, I applied a mix of black and Payne's gray for the dark gray trousers, as they were already a dark color garment. I needed a cooler black this time to boost the color contrast. Finally, using this same dark gray color, I applied a few touches to create a basic weather approach to the helmet. To take now the full oil wash potential, now it's key to remove the excess of paint, as I applied a general wash over the entire figure. Now I want to make sure the oil paint will only remain in the recesses and desired areas. Using a wet brush and enamel thinner, I carefully remove the excess of paint. For this, always keep in mind the zenithal highlighting for scale figures. Therefore, paint in the upper surfaces or in flatter areas should be removed. This is an easy task, as oil paints takes a while to fully dry and it can be blended easily. In my case, I struggled a bit when blending the oil washes. Maybe I should let the paint to dry a little bit more, so oil paint coat won't be so fresh, as speed paints and oils tend to accumulate in the recesses. If you want to push the color contrast to the limits, there is no other way than using common acrylics. Using matching colors, I applied the paint slightly diluted, so the covering is stronger. This time it's not about glazing or color blending, and I started painting first, adjusting every general shape. It took me a couple of minutes for the bigger areas, adjusting every transition, and making some corrections for wrinkles and textures. It was pretty obvious how this acrylic highlighting works, just by applying a few brushstrokes for enhancing the definition. Remember, this is not about soft transitions, but effective color definition for volumes and shapes. When working on trousers, the approach was very similar. I took a neutral grey, and then I added a bit of light skin tone to make it lighter, and I hit the main highlighting surfaces. Again, as I already established both midtones and darkest colors, I only focus in painting the highlight areas and forget about the other parts, as you can work in a very systematic way. That's the key of all of this. Finally, for small details, due to the small size and time restriction, trying to create greater color transitions, it's not a good idea. So that's why I decided to go with an easier approach and apply some basic edge highlighting. Edge highlighting is not the most effective or stylish way to paint a figure, but it becomes super useful when you look for some quick and nice results, as this figure has a lot of small details like slings, ammo patches or raised details. I just varied the outlining color each time to the one which better fits for each base color. For leather parts, I painted them to rough, as these parts tend to weather in a unique way. I looked for a more textured result this time, applying some hard brush strokes over the piece and finally followed by an orange filter to give some color saturation to the piece and make it warmer. Some of the last parts, like the bread bag and canteen, were treated too with the same basic approach, focusing again more in the texturing process, which makes them really eye-catching, then creating a nice and smooth color transition. For representing the fur texture of the canteen, I made the basic texturing with white color, and later I applied a few passes with human flesh speed paint for finishing the textured effect. Finally, for the face painting, I tried to paint it following this speed paint approach, but I will have to develop a better way this time, as I really struggled with it. I made a first try, applying first a coat of human flesh as I mentioned before. Next, I applied another layer of a warmer red speed paint color. The result from now on was pretty nice, but when I tried to add some quick and basic acrylic detailing to the face, the color contrast was way too low, so the result was not convincing at all. Judge yourself for the result. So I quickly turned out for a more conventional approach, and I repainted the face with a really dark base skin tone and a reddish acrylic wash this time. What do you think? Do you agree repainting the face, or would you leave the face just like that? I think this can be an interesting topic. Keeping that in mind, and because this is a speed paint, this time I chose a more straightforward method. So now I started from a very dark shadow color as a base, and then moving towards lighter flesh colors until reaching the final highlights. So resuming the face painting work, applying small and soft touches with red beige color, I kept painting the face, working in small details, and creating the main highlighting shapes. Finally, for the last skin tone highlights, I used sunny skin tone and small amounts of white. Although there was no time for some calm painting, I think the result of the face skin tone is still effective. After the flesh painting was completed, eyes were painted searching for an effective and dramatic appearance. As always, I prefer to paint them in the end, so I can adjust the final look of the face better. Finally, I added the last touches, some metallic reflections using graphite, in the main metal pieces like canteen, rifle and flare gun. So this is the final result. Figure has been fully painted and, as I said in the beginning of the video, I painted it really fast, specifically if you compare it with the traditional figure painting method. I needed a total time of 1 hour and 20 minutes or so, also keeping in mind that I had to repaint the figure face. But if you skip that, this method makes you paint figures so fast. The techniques and paints used for it are well known for scale modelers. As you can see, you don't need to get super smooth results to get an eye-catching figure to use in your dioramas or to enhance your scale model. Of course, this method lacks of some more advanced detail painting and smoother results, but it has some very important benefits as you see. Finally, I'd like to mention the channel which inspired me to try this new approach to historical scale figures. Marco Frisioni's channel has been working with speed paint techniques, keeping a high quality painting standard and a big dose of artistic knowledge in its background. Go and check it out, but I'm pretty sure some of you will already know him. If you like this video and you are interested in painting scale figures, let me recommend you to check this other figure painting video, where you can watch how to achieve more detailed and realistic results. As always, I hope you found this video useful or interesting. So, thanks for watching and I see you in the next one.